Okay, so we're in Perashat Re'eh, Perek Yud Bet, Pasuk Aleph. So here we go. So Ela hachukim v'hamishpatim asher tishmeru la'asot ba'aretz asher natan Hashem Elokei avatecha lecha l'rishta kol hayamim asher atem chayim al ha'adama. So these are the laws and rules, right, that Moshe is telling Bnei Israel that you must carefully observe in the land that Hashem is going to give you, in the land of Israel. You are about to enter the land of Israel. These are the laws that I want you to keep in mind. Abed ha'abdun et kol ha'mekomot asher abdu sham hagoyim asher atem yorshim otam et Elohehem al ha'arim haramim ve'al ha'gebaot v'tachat kol etz ra'anan. Hashem is telling, Moshe is telling Bnei Israel, I want you to completely destroy and get rid of any signs of idolatry, any signs of foreign gods. Wherever they are, in the trees, on the mountains, in the hills, wherever they are, now that we are entering the land of Israel, I want you to completely get rid of all signs of idolatry. וניצצתם את מזבחותם ושיברתם את מצבתם באשריהם תשליפון באש ופסילי אלוהיהם תגדעון ויבעתם את שמם מן המקום ההוא. So we're seeing, right, once again, tear down their altars, smash their pillars, put their, their posts to the fire. Once again, just completely remove any signs of idolatry. Lo ta'asun ken laHashem Elohehem. Do not worship God in the way that these foreign nations would worship their foreign gods. And what is he referring to? Here we have, Ki im el hamakom asher yivchar Hashem Elohechem mikol shivtechem lasum et shema shama shechnot tidreshu uvata shama. So what is Hashem referring to when he says, don't worship me like the other nations worship their other gods? Hashem is referring to the fact that with idolatry, the way that nations would worship foreign gods, where they would worship God at any place that they wanted. There was no specific centralized place to worship God. Wherever they saw fit, they would worship God, they would give their sacrifices, they would do whatever their rituals were, but it was at any place. And Hashem says, Ki im el hamakom asher yivchar Hashem lasum et shemo sham lishechnot tidrishu uvata shama. Hashem is telling Bnei Israel, now that you are entering the land of Israel, you cannot worship me at any place that you want, in any spontaneous way. You have to worship me only in the place that I choose to reside my name. And here we see in the text, tidrishu uvata shama. If you chase after me, that is where I will come. Right from here, we learn just the side point that Hashem comes to those who search after him, like as we see in Tehillim, Hashem karov lechol kara'av. Hashem is close to all those who call to him. That's why you have these words, tidrushu, which means to chase, uvat Hashem. Hashem will come where you chase him. But Hashem wants us to know that now we are making a shift as a nation. We need to now only worship God where he chooses to put his name in one specific place. And in this place that I will choose, Hashem is telling you, there you will bring your korbanot, your ma'asrot, all of these things. So now let's continue. Lo ta'asun kechol asher anachnu osim po hayom ish kol hayashad be'enav. Don't do as the other nations do, where they worship God at any place, right? Ish kol hayashad be'enav, where every person does what he thinks is right in their eyes. Let's continue. Ki lo ba'atem ad ata el hamenucha ve'el hanachala asher Hashem Elohechem noteh lach. Because now you are coming into your own land, the land that you possess, the land of Israel. So we're going to continue on. V'haya hamakom, once again, it's getting redundant now, but it is on purpose. V'haya hamakom asher yivchar Hashem Elokechem bo l'shachen shemo shama tavi'u et kol asher anochim b'teveitchem elotchem v'zivrechem v'atzorotchem v'tzumat yetchem v'chol mifchad nidrechem asher tzidru Hashem. Once again, Hashem is telling Bnei Israel, only in the place that I choose to reside my name within can you worship me. Repeating. And we continue. Usimachtem lifnei Hashem Elokechem atem uvnechem uvnotechem ve'avdechem ve'amotechem ve'halevi asher b'sha'arechem ki en lo chelek v'nachala etchem. Hashem is saying that when you come to this place that I chose for you, this centralized place of worship, this one place, I want you, your sons, your daughters, your slaves, the female slaves. I want you all to come into this place of worship, and you will all be happy as a result of that. So we're going to go into that pasuk a little bit later. Let's go on here. Once again, we see once again, we're seeing again Hashem stressing the point: only worship me in the place that I choose to reside my name. It's getting very redundant. And we see here, and we're going to continue down here. Once again, Hashem is saying, only worship me in the place that I choose to reside my name. Once again, Hashem is saying, in this place, all walks of people will come, the slave, the females, the males, so on and so forth. And once again, we have this word over here, v'samachta, you will be happy. When you come to this centralized place of worship, you will be happy. And so now I want to pause here. We read all these Pesukim. I want to unpack them a little bit. The question that we have is, Moshe here in this speech, he's driving the point home. I think there is about 15 times within this parasha that Moshe tells Bnei Israel that you can only worship God in the place that he chooses to reside his name. That you can only worship God in this centralized place of worship. And so the question that we have is that why is God taking this so seriously, where this theme is like smacking us in the face? We can't get around this theme. It's constantly being reaffirmed within the text. And why is God taking this so seriously? Because in fact, we see that in previous books, in Bereshit, in Shemot, right, our forefathers, Abraham, Yaakov, for example, they themselves have worshipped God in spontaneous places. On their journeys, they have built these mizbeach, they gave korbanot. So why all of a sudden now is Hashem telling Bnei Israel that you can no longer worship God at any place? Now you have to worship God in one specific place that I choose, which would eventually be the Beit HaMikdash, by the way. And so the answer that we have is that what changed now? Bnei Israel are going to possess the land of Israel. And now that Bnei Israel are going to have their own land in the land of Israel, now it is the time to create a name for God. Now it is the time to create a clear identity, to define ourselves clearly to the world. And so that's why Hashem specifically says, Hashem says, Hashem says, I want you to worship me only in the place that I reside my name there, which is strange wording. Why reside my name? Why not my presence? Why not other words? Hashem specifically says, worship me in the place where I rest my name. And why is that? Because when we think of the word, when we hear the word name, right? A name reminds us of someone's essence, and a name reminds us of someone's reputation. And so Hashem wants, now that we have the land of Israel, he wants us to clearly define his reputation. He wants us to clearly present to the world what his essence is and what the God of Israel stands for. Now that you have your own land, Israel, you have to declare who the God of Israel is. And when you have a centralized place of worship, it is not only easy to control God's reputation, but it is easy to build God's reputation for other people to see it. When people come within our land of Israel, and they come to this place of worship, which would ultimately be the Beit HaMikdash, it would clearly reflect God's essence, the name of God, God's reputation. And an example is, right, if you worship God in many places, for example, like a franchise, if you have many places, it's hard to control the reputation of a brand if you have so many places. But if you only have one place, it's easy to control the reputation of a brand. And that's perhaps why Hashem wants us to worship him in one centralized place. His name, he resides his name there. We have to be able to present the name of God, the reputation of God to the world. That's our job now, coming into the land of Israel. But not only that, let's continue. Hashem also says, Lo ta'asun kechol asher anachnu osim po hayom ish kol ashar be'anav. Hashem does not want every man to do as he pleases. Each man, ish kol ashar be'anav. Every man to do what he thinks is right in his eyes. He doesn't want the religion to be something that is individualistic. He wants the religion we have to worship God in a unified and organized manner. We are a collective unit. and we have to reflect a collective message. And God is teaching Bnei Israel that we have to be a unified nation. We cannot each do our own individual things and have everything be scattered and all over the place. And also having one centralized place where we worship God prevents the probability of the nation becoming fragmented and dispersed. It allows the nation to stay glued together and unified, having a central message. And here we see, right? Hashem is saying that in this centralized place of worship, I want uvincha, uvitecha, ve'avatcha, ve'amatecha, ve'halevi, right? I want everybody, all walks of life, to come worship me in the eventual Beit HaMikdash, in this centralized place of worship. All people from all walks of life, from you all the way down to your slaves, even from people who are seemingly the lowest of society ranks. I want you all to come to worship me in the centralized place of worship, because to show that we are all equal in the eyes of God. That as Jews, there is no hierarchical society. We are a horizontal society where everybody is equal in the eyes of God, and we should not discriminate. This place that represents God's name teaches the world that as Jews and the God, right, of Israel understands that we will never be exclusive, that we will accept everybody unified in the eyes of God. And once again, we have here, Hashem once again says, be careful, right? Take care. Don't sacrifice, once again, don't worship God and make korbanot in any place that you see fit, in any place that you like. And from here, we also learn that if we feel like we can worship God in any place, whenever we want, at a whim, it brings a casual quality to the worship of God. And we have to approach our relationship with God with a level of seriousness and with a level of respect. And if we worship God in any place on a whim, right, it brings this casual quality and dwindles the serious relationship that we should approach God with. We have to approach God with a level of authority, with a level of respect. And that goes right along the same lines of God tells Bnei Israel later not to say his name in vain. Don't say God's name whenever you want. Don't say God's name when it is not granted, because you have to be able to approach God with a level of seriousness. And finally, within this context, Hashem says, Hashem is saying, and this is repeated multiple times in this parasha, that when we read this parasha, we see that every time, almost every time, 99% of the time, when Hashem says that you will come and worship God in this centralized place, Hashem says, as a result, you will be happy. You will be happy when you all congregate in this centralized place of worship. So what is the connection between happiness and worshiping God in this one place? And from here we learn that having a sense of community and having a sense of collectivism brings upon happiness. How many, right, when people from the nation of Israel would come to this centralized place of worship, and they would see people from all walks of life from their own nation, they would get the feel that they are not just an individual alone, that they are a link in a part of a grand chain, that they are part of a great people, of a bigger people that are bigger than themselves. They are not alone. They are not just an individual. And that is why, when you come to this place, you will be happy, because having a sense of collectivism, a sense that you are part of a greater community, brings upon happiness. And how many of us, right, because we are part of a community, we feel a sense of security, we feel a sense of fulfillment, we feel a sense of fullness, completion, because we are part of something bigger than just ourselves, and that ultimately gives us happiness. And then we also see, right, that Hashem, with the Shalosh Regalim are Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, Hashem says that he wants Bnei Israel to once again go to this centralized place of worship. And what does Hashem say? With these three pilgrimages that you will do to this centralized place of worship, you will specifically be happy, further emphasizing the point that when you go to a congregation where you see your nation and you have a sense of community, that will allow you to have a sense of overall happiness. So now I want to continue with the text. We're going to go down here So now Hashem tells Bnei Israel, Ki yadchiv Hashem Elokecha et gulecha, ka'asher diber lecha, ve'amarta ochla basar ki ta'aveh nafshecha, le'echol basar, v'chol avat nafshecha, tochal basar. Ki yirchach mimcha makom asher yivcha Hashem Elokecha, le'asum shemo Hashem zalachta. Okay, we're going to continue on. So basically what Hashem is telling Bnei Israel is, in the past there was a law that you could only eat the meat of the korbanot that you would give to God. But because now there is only one place where you could worship God, because the land of Israel is so big and it's not easy to get to this central place, Hashem is telling Bnei Israel, don't worry, you can eat meat whenever you want. You don't only have to eat meat of the korbanot, because that would be very hard. But what I want to focus on is the word that the Torah uses in this pasuk. It's so beautiful, the word that the Torah uses. You really just can't get the gist of it when you read the English. So I want to go into the Hebrew, and the word choice that the Torah uses really helps us extract a beautiful message. Hashem, in the Torah, it says, Ki ta'aveh nafshecha. Ki ta'aveh means when you crave with your soul, nafshecha, le'echol basar, when you crave with your soul to eat meat, v'chol avat nafshecha, all the craving that you have with the soul, you can eat. So if you have the urge to eat meat, you may eat meat whenever you wish. But the question that we have is that why does the pasuk say, when you crave meat with your soul, ki ta'aveh nafshecha, right? It would have made more sense if the pasuk said, when you crave meat with your stomach, because after all, craving meat, craving food, is something that is very much physical. And a nefesh, nafshecha, is something that is very much spiritual. So why does God, right, in the Torah, pair these two seemingly opposing words together? We cannot crave with our soul. So what is the reason behind this? And from here we can learn a beautiful message that Hashem is teaching us, that it is our job that even with something as animalistic and physical as craving food, we have to inject spirituality within it. It is our job to weave together spirituality and physicality, even with something as animalistic as craving food. And we should never subject ourselves completely to our animalistic side. We should never completely separate. They always have to be bonded together. So even though, right, God is saying crave with your soul, right? Because crave food with your soul, the physical and the spiritual worlds have to always be combined together. So I want to continue now on to Perek Yud Daled, where Moshe gives Bnei Israel really such beautiful commands, which teach us to be selfless, to be giving, to be humble. It's just so amazing. It really teaches us how beautiful the Torah is, what a beautiful moral code we are given. So now I want to go into this specific chapter of the Parashah, where we see specific mitzvot that I want to highlight. ואני אתם להשם אלוהיכם, לא תתגודדו ולא תשימו קרחה בין עיניכם למת. Moshe is telling Bnei Israel, Banim atem Hashem, you are God's children. Therefore, don't gash yourself, don't cut yourself, don't make bald spots in your head when somebody dies. And that was the typical ritual that the foreign nations would do, right, that the idolatrous nations would do. When people would die, they were so overcome by mourning that they would literally hurt themselves. They would make themselves get bald spots. They would injure themselves because they were so overcome by the loss. And so the question that we have is, right, so Hashem says, don't do that. You are different. And the question that we have is that why is this pasuk introduced with Banim atem Hashem? Don't cut yourself because someone died, specifically because you are God's children. The Ibn Ezra gives a beautiful explanation to this. Banim atem Hashem, that we have to always remember that we are the children of God. We are God's children. And just as a parent always wants the best for his child and always gives the child opportunities to grow, we are God's children. We have to understand that God never wants to hurt us. Everything that happens in our life is for our benefit. And therefore, even if someone dies, do not hurt yourself. Do not be overcome by the loss, as you know that you are God's children, and as you know that you have to understand that it is for your benefit. כי עם קדוש אתה להשם אלוקיך, ובחר השם להיות לו לעם סגולה מכל העמים אשר על פני האדמה. I was reading Rabbi Moshe Shamer's book. He says also something beautiful that I want to bring down. Hashem is telling us that we are God's children, because to remind us that we are God's children, and therefore we have to respect God as our parent. As children, we have a responsibility to what's the word? To bring up the name of our parents, to highlight our parents' name in a positive light, right? That is one of our roles as children, right? To bring on a positive legacy from our parents, to show the world that our parents were great. And so, Banim Atem Hashem, you are God's children. You have a responsibility to show the legacy of God, to show how great God is. You bear His name, and so therefore, don't cut yourself. Don't put bald spots on your head. Don't act in such a silly manner, right? Ki am kadosh, you are a holy nation. Carry yourself with dignity. Carry yourself with respect. Am Segula, Hashem chose us, and therefore we should not gash ourselves. We should not allow ourselves to be overcome by the loss and act in such a terrible manner where we defile our bodies. Okay, so now I want to continue. We're here, right? And now here Moshe is giving us the commands of kashrut. The commands, right, that we learn, the commands of kashrut with animals. So b'kol behemat mefares parsa v'sha'asa v'shosat shesat shtei parasot ma'ala gereva behema otat achlu. Right, as we all know, what are kosher animals? The animals that choose its cud, that have split hooves. And Moshe continues to say the kashrut of the fish in the sea, the kashrut of the birds. And perhaps that's another hint as to how we would crave, right, food with our nefesh. How do we inject spirituality within something as physical and animalistic as craving food, as the whole topic of food is to practice restraint. That is something that is not something that is found in the animalistic world, to practice restraint. But as humans, that we have a soul, we can practice restraint, and that's here that we get the laws of kashrut, forcing us and teaching us and training us to practice restraint in life, having the strength to hold yourself back. That is part of bringing the spiritual world with something as physical as food. And here we're going to continue. 14 here. So after the laws of kashrut, Moshe tells Bnei Israel, et kol tfuat zarecha hayotzeh hasadeh shana shana. You shall set aside every 10th year, ma'aser, 10th of your field, for God. Okay? Once again, only in the place that God chooses, where God will reside, His name, His reputation. So every 10th year, set aside, right, a 10th part of your field, the maaser of your field, and you should leave it for God. And let's continue here. We get the command, Mikzeh shalosh shanim totzi et kol ma'aser tvoratcha b'shana hu v'hinachta b'sharecha. And every 3rd year, I want you to leave this ma'aser, this 10th of your field, for the needy, for the poor, for the ged, for the stranger, for the widow, and for the orphan. What a beautiful command, right? To teach us that not only should we leave a ma'aser for Hashem, but we should also, from our own crops, leave some for the people who are in need. What a beautiful law that we are given from the Torah. What a beautiful message. And now we continue. Miket sheva shanim ta'aseh shemitah. וזה הדבר השמיטה שאמרת כל בעל מעשה ידו אשר יעשה ברעהו לא ייגש את רעהו ואת אחיו כי קרא שמיטה להשם. Every 7th year, you should cancel the debts that other people owe you, which is, again, such an amazing, revolutionary concept that Judaism teaches, that the Torah has, that when people owe us debts, that if we loan money to someone, if they can't pay us back, that's it. By the 7th year, that's the cutoff. We completely cancel the debts. Being selfless, right? Teaching us to be selfless. That it's not all about us, but that we have to cancel, right? We do not force people to give us money when they cannot afford it. And let's continue. There we go, 7 here. כי השם בך אביון מאחד אחיך באחד שעריך בארצך את השם אלוקיך נותן לך לא תאמץ את לבביך ולא תקפוץ את ידך מאחיך האביון. Right? כי פתוח תפתח את ידך תעביתהו די מחסורו אל יחסר לו. If you have a poor person, a person who is in need, coming to you, open your hand, patoch tiftach, right? We have that double verb, right, to show that we should do it enthusiastically. Don't just open your hand to the people who are poor, to the people who are in need. Patoch tiftach, do it enthusiastically. Do it with, right, with strength. Open your hand to the poor, once again, teaching us to be giving, to be selfless, and we continue. נתון תיתן ולא יראה לבבך בתיתך, לא כי בגלל הדבר הזה יברכך השם אלוקיך כל מעשיך ובכל משלח ידיך. Here. כי לא יחדל אביון בקרב הארץ, על כן אנוכי מצווך לאמור פתוח תפתח את ידיך לאחיך לעניך ולאביון בארצך. Once again, further emphasizing the point that we should open our hands, open our hearts to the people in need. And here we have the laws of slavery. כי מאחד לך אחיך העברי או עברייה ועבדך 6 שנים בשנה השביעית ששלחנו חפשי מעמך. This is really like such an unbelievable thing because it is so revolutionary within the context of the time where the world had slaves. The Torah is teaching us that in the 7th year, you shall set your slaves free, which was really, for the most part, unheard of at the time, that in the 7th year, you let your slaves go. Really such a revolutionary text that we have with our Torah. And when you set him free, don't only set him free, but don't let him go empty-handed. Right? Give him gifts. Allow him to go with things to go forth on his journey with. Don't leave him without anything. Right? Furnish him with flock, threshing floor, and that, right? Give him gifts. Because right? Why should he do this? Because you yourselves were slaves, and as I said in last week's parasha, that as Jews, right, we have an obligation to take our pain, right, our past pain, because we were slaves in Egypt. We have an obligation to take our pain as Jews. We take our pain. We don't make our pain harden us. We make our pain and we turn it into something that softens us. We turn our pain into something that allows us to be sympathetic to people who are going through something that we previously went through. Don't think that once you're past something in life that you are above that. No, if you experience pain as Jews, we have a moral obligation to be there for people who are going through the same thing that we went through. And so let's continue. And if the slave says, but I don't want to leave you, I love your house, right? You're allowed to keep him. But you shall, right, put his door to the ear and right, like that earring, and so on and so forth. So here we have, okay, and then at the end, towards the end of the parasha, Moshe gives the command of the Shalosh Regalim, Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot. And as I said before, within these Pesukim, we see V'samachta lifnei Hashem, right? As you make these pilgrimages to this centralized place of worship, you will be happy. And although there are so many beautiful messages that we learn from these specific commands, to be selfless, to be humble, to be giving, right? The Torah teaches us that we should always put other people before ourselves. But other than that, I believe that there is also a general theme that we can find within these mitzvot that I just listed. And that is that with all these mitzvot, we are taught that we don't own anything in life. What do I mean by that? We simply borrow things in life. Why can't you defile your body? Why can't you gash your skin? Why can't you put bald spots in your heads, like Hashem said in the beginning? Because our body is not ours. We borrow our body, and it is not ours to destroy. Why do we give ma'aser to Hashem, a tenth of our field to God? Because we have to understand that our wealth, our property is not ours. It is really God's. Why should we open our hand to the poor? Because we should understand that our wealth is given to us. We don't own anything in life. Why should we keep kosher? Right? Because the land, the behemoth, it's not ours to call the shots. It's Hashem's. And we simply are residing within the earth. All of these, right? Why should we let go of our slave, let him free, right? Again, we do not own anything in life. And it is an important springboard, that concept of understanding that we merely borrow things in life. We do not own anything in life. These are just possessions, fleeting possessions. Hashem gives us everything that we have in life. That is the springboard that will allow us to be God-fearing. It will allow us to stay on the right path, and it will allow us to have a humble relationship with God. And so with that, I leave you guys a Shabbat Shalom. Thank you, everybody, for joining my class. It was such a pleasure teaching everybody, and hopefully I will see you all soon. So thank you, everybody, for joining.